Wow, I can't wait to introduce you to Pat Marquis. Such an interesting story. Imagine if your wife comes to you and says, I want to ride the Pacific Crest Trail. That happened to him. Of course, they both were excellent when it came to riding horses and doing adventurous things in the outdoors. So we'll get to that story in just a minute. But before we do, I would be remiss not to tell you a little bit about his story. What a career he certainly has had. And I can understand why he and his wife lived an adventurous life out of doors for sure, because of some of the things that happened being on a small ranch. And also in his career, think of Alaska and think of being in Alaska and being the first construction worker at the Valdez terminal site of the Alaska pipeline. Wow. I can think of bears, I can think of incredible wildlife, but also I can think of being scared out of my mind. I'm sure Pat wasn't. So Pat, thanks for coming on.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
So we do have to tell the stories. What was that like being the first construction worker at this huge site on the Alaska pipeline?
It was an adventure in itself. The site itself obviously had people working on it to prepare it, at least doing topographic surveys and all the information they needed to design the facility. But when we got there, we went to a camp that was in the town of Valdez, a trailer camp. And the first day of work, they took us by bus into town and took us to the boat harbor. We got off, onto a unified six-pack. That means it can carry 6 people. And they took us across a bay, which is several miles, so that took 10, 15 minutes. They offloaded us onto a floating raft, basically. We put all our equipment on the raft and then put all our equipment into a rowboat, and we rowed ashore to do our first day's worth of work. Now, This is a $1 billion contract. They had all the money in the world, and yet we're rowing ashore. It was amazing, to tell you the truth.
Oh, boy. Well, we can talk about it all day, but let's get to your other journey. And the book is called that, The Journey. And you talk about the Pacific Crest Trail. And how did this come about? How did Rhonda come up with this idea that she wanted to do it?
Well, we've been adventurous, and several years before this, he had embarked on a trail here in Central Oregon that's called the Metolius Wendigo Trail, which is a 150-mile trail, taking you from one mountain pass and down into the valleys and along the route parallel to the highway system, and then back up to the top of the mountains. And she rode that with several friends, not me because I was working, but she did that trip, and that kind of got her started on knowing that she was capable of doing something like this. And packing, to carry your own supplies and what do you carry, planning and training herself and the horse to be able to do it. So that got it started. And then we had friends that had ridden a portion of the Pacific Crest Trail through the state of Oregon, roughly 450 miles. And they had, and they were close friends. And so Rhonda had the opportunity to bounce ideas off these folks and understand just really what it took in terms of planning and preparation to embark on a trip of this nature. You have anywhere from 4 to 7 days at times that you're totally off any system at all other than the trail, and it's totally up to you, to prepare yourself and to have all the food and fodder and horse supplies and everything you need to stay safe and have a good time.
And this is rugged and treacherous. Were you worried? I mean, you did part of it. Were you worried about her being out there by herself?
That's part of life. We separate all the time. You could get hurt driving to work the next day. So, yes, I worried about her and had those concerns, but I also had a lot of faith in her inner abilities to cope with most anything. And that was pretty much proven on her trip on the trail. She had several circumstances that took every bit of knowledge and wit and perseverance and courage to get her through it.
Yeah. And she rode for 1,500 miles, which is amazing. You told me 15 miles a day for basically 100 days. And you were there for part of it. When you could be there, you were there. What was it like being on the horse, being with her when you could do it? And what kind of things, what kind of nature did you see? It had to be beautiful.
Oh, yes, it certainly was, although I didn't go on the most difficult portions. I have the malady of being afraid of heights to some extent, so, when we were out there riding together, she said, just look at the butt of the horse in front of you and don't look down. So it sometimes is that kind of a treacherous trail where you might, if you went off the trail, you might have 500 feet to go downhill in a rolling fashion, not walking. So I enjoyed it thoroughly at riding with her. I wish I could have gone on more of the trip, but we took advantage of this opportunity to be together, and we knew we were getting close to the end, and it was just a really fun time to be together, even though the first 2 days were in rain. And finding a campsite and putting your horses up and making sure they're secure and all those things, getting your tent and facilities put up and weathering the storm is part of that trip.
And it's interesting in deciding to do that trip. I mean, you both knew how to handle horses. You loved to, and you were adventurous, as I said, and you liked horseback riding as a couple, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Our house, our life has been centered on, our relationships with the horses, and gladly so. And even though they're sometimes problematic, it's been a wonderful life to be able to have that relationship. Horses are a unique animal, and as you would probably find if you got online and studied it a little bit, there's a lot of horses now being used to help people that have mental difficulties, that they can relate to a horse easier than they can people.
Yeah. What was her most difficult day on that journey?
Well, there were several, but one was the day that she was riding on the trail above Lake Tahoe through the top of the ridges, and the horse, basically she had an accident with the horse. The horse got caught on some brush and backed up, and consequently went off the trail and rolled down the hill. And she had to rescue the horse and get him back on his feet, get all the supplies back on him, and he was injured severely. And from then she had to figure out, communication with me to say, I've got to come off the trail. And luckily, she had a hiker there that had witnessed all of this, and he helped her accomplish what needed to be done in order for her to get back down to civilization, and we could tend to the horse's problems that he had through his injuries. So that was probably one of the most difficult times for her. Not only did she have to do all of that, the horse also trampled her on the way back up on to the trail, and she separated her collarbone from her sternum.
Ugh.
And so she came out riding the horse for 10 miles while injured herself, and we had to take her to the hospital that night.
Wow. In writing that story and then writing all the wonderful things that happened, and just what a determination and bravery and courage and everything that's mixed in with that, how fun was this for you to put pen to paper, so to speak, and come up with the journey?
When she first asked me, I wasn't all that hot to do it. I knew how troublesome it was going to be in terms of the logistics of just providing the food and transportation to move our crew basically from one spot to the other. But after a while, I got to thinking about it, and I said, well, it's going to be an adventure. Why not do it? And obviously, it was an adventure. I loved meeting so many people along the trail when I was by myself and Rhonda was up on the mountains. And I'd stop over and chat with the nearest person who might be camping or just walking or whatever they might be doing, and sometimes it was store owners, sometimes it was forestry people. But there was always an occasion for me to, be social and just enjoyed it thoroughly.
What do you hope people, Pat, take away from reading your book, The Journey, which you can get on Amazon or Barnes & Noble?
Well, I had some people write me after they'd read the book, and I'm going to just quote this because they have a lot of meaning to me. These were testimonials from people that had been through the book. One was, loved the book, loved your style of writing, can't say enough good things about it. Another one, a delightful story of grit, determination, and labor of love. And let's see, the last one was from somebody I'd never known, and he had read the book and sent me a letter. It said, through humor, pathos, and clarity, the author takes readers on an unforgettable journey where they can experience the heartbreak, trials, and triumphs of this extreme adventure riding the PCT. It's a fascinating read, one that I found hard to put down until the journey's end.
Perfect place to end this. Pat, thank you so much for coming on.
All right. Thank you, Kate. I appreciate it very much.